Most men quit semen retention because they don't understand how to do it properly. They don't understand how to make it sustainable for themselves, and they think that they failed when they've actually made a lot of success. Now, you may have heard of the linear model, but what you're probably not familiar is the investment model, which is my personal philosophy when it comes to semen retention. In this video, you're going to learn and understand the real timeline of semen retention and how you can make this a long-term sustainable path for yourself instead of a quick fix full of frustrations and ups and downs. And this isn't some watered down semen retention timeline that you've heard of before. There's a lot of gurus who are completely new to semen retention. They have no idea what they're talking about. And what I'm about to share with you could just well be your key to unlocking your most masculine, empowered, creative, and driven version of yourself. You ready? Let's get into it. I'm Jonathan White. I've helped thousands of men from around the world learn to master their sexual energy to manifest their ideal lives. If you want to learn how to up-level your ejaculation control so that you can retain your semen during sex, get my free ebook through the link in the video description below. And hit subscribe to stay updated when I drop new content like this. Guys, I've been practicing semen retention for a long time. I've been practicing semen retention for almost 12 years now. That doesn't mean I haven't ejaculated in those 12 years. But I've made this a long-term game for myself. I've made this a sustainable thing. There's never a day that goes by when I'm like, uh-oh, am I gonna jerk off to porn? I'm gonna have a relapse, which I think is a stupid word when it comes to this. It's not something I think about anymore. It's just a part of my lifestyle because I have a healthy mindset with it. I have a sustainable way of doing it, and I have an understanding of what I'm actually doing with this energy. But it wasn't always like this. So when I first got into semen retention, it was like 2013, 2012, 2013. I read this book. This is a classic, Taoist Secrets of Love, Cultivating Male Sexual Energy by Montauk Chia and Michael Wynn. I studied with Michael Wynn extensively. This was my introduction to these practices. Semen retention, and this book talks about how, it's not a good idea to ejaculate all the time and how men can transform their semen into spiritual energy. They can actually have sex and even experience orgasm without ejaculating and still practice semen retention. However, the book was not without its flaws. Let me tell you though, at this time, there was no one talking about semen retention in 2014. There was a few people, 2013, 2014. There was barely anyone talking about it. I had some books. There was a few things on forums on the internet. So I didn't have a lot to go by. I struggled for the first couple years of what am I actually supposed to do? How am I supposed to transmute this sexual energy? And it felt like this whole new underground world I was entering into. I couldn't talk to anyone about this. No one understood what I was talking about. And I felt a bit alone on this path. It's true in any sort of esoteric type of practice, where in the beginning, all you have to go on is other people's information. You're reading books, you're listening to other people talk about it. There's a tendency to just believe everything you read is fact and truth. Well, this dude, he sounds serious, he must know what he's talking about. And so we just accept these things as facts. My first couple of years, I was so obsessed with semen retention that I was like, okay, I need to never ever ejaculate again. Because it's kind of the point that this book makes, even though both the co-authors, Montauk Chia and Michael Wynn, have very, very different perspectives, and they teach different practices now than what's in the book. And so I had this thought of okay, this is how it works. So looking at this linear model, because this is how most men talking about semen retention and practicing semen retention, this is what they believe. It's okay, you start here, you're at an absolute low. This is your energy level. We could say your testosterone, your drive, your energy level over time. And it's basically the more days you go without ejaculating, the higher and higher and higher and higher it gets. And there's no end to it, just gets higher and higher and higher and higher. I would go a month and then I would ejaculate. And I would feel damn, I failed, I lost everything, I have to start all the way over. And it was just this very up-down process of yeah, I'm doing it, I'm never ejaculating again. Oh, I'm 6 weeks in. And then I'd have a wet dream or something, be shit, I'm back at day one. I'm starting from nothing. I would have this guilt trip, I'd have this shame trip every time that inevitably I did ejaculate again. So I was I failed, I'm never gonna get this, I can't do this. That's when I discovered that this isn't really how it works. Ultimately, there's a bit of truth to this. I'll get more into this, but eventually, when I was about maybe 4 or so years into semen retention, I started to realize that when I did ejaculate, it didn't really change much. I still had a lot of energy. Often I would still be horny and ready to go in a few minutes, like I was when I was 18. There wasn't actually that much of a difference whether I was on day 3 or day 35. Here's the thing, I study with different teachers. I don't just learn stuff from books and videos. I find teachers to directly study with so that I can get feedback, I can be taught, exactly how to do the thing. Different teachers had different perspectives on this. I was like, one teacher says I should ejaculate every 5 days. One teacher says I should never, ever, ever ejaculate under any circumstance. But they both seem full of energy and healthy and vital. So like, why don't I experiment? Okay, as an experiment, I'm going to ejaculate once a week for a month. So for 4 weeks, I ejaculated 1 time per week. And it was during sex with my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now. It was the spring. So spring is a time where there's an abundance of energy. The time of the year affects how often you can ejaculate without losing energy. So I'm ejaculating once a week, it's spring, and I feel no energy loss. I feel great, in fact. You know, I had a course launch at the time that I crushed. I was creating all this content. Nothing had changed. There was no like grinding halt to my progress in life. A few years before that, anytime that I did ejaculate, I felt just wiped out, just depleted. I felt terrible. But this was no longer the case. And what I realized was this model that I'm about to share with you right now. I call this the investment model. This is a more sustainable understanding of semen retention, because if the only thing you have is the linear model, while technically there is some truth to this, like in general, the mistake that men get into is it's either you're on day 90, 100 and you're up here, or it's on day 1 and you're all the way down here and you have to start all the way over again. The longer you go, the more your energy increases, the more your testosterone increases. This is complete bullshit. This is the real model, okay? This is how it is. I'm gonna be talking about a concept from Chinese medicine, which I've studied, which is known as Jing, J-I-N-G. This is our Jing bucket. And this is basically representing we could say our vitality, our physical essence. Jing is essentially physical essence, and it's feeding our hormones. It's actually feeding the body's physicality, the ability for your body to maintain itself. You know, the cellular reproduction, all the processes, it's taking energy. And that energy is Jing. You're born with a certain amount of it, and once you spend it, it's gone, and you die. But you can, we could say, reinvest in your Jing to rebuild it, okay? So the idea is that we're born with our bucket. Our Jing bucket is full. That's why when we're children, we have an abundance of energy. And that's why when you're a teenager, it seems like you can just ejaculate like over and over and over again, and it doesn't matter because you're ready to go in 5 minutes. Although that's becoming much less the case these days because everyone is so depleted. Hormone levels are screwed up from a variety of reasons. But anyways, you're born with your Jing bucket. And there's a lot of ways you spend your Jing. It's not all just ejaculating. Semen retention is not a fix-all by any means. Your stress is gonna, stressors in general, emotional, physical, etc. It's gonna cause, it's gonna cause a leak in your Jing bucket. You got a little leak here. But the big one for men is ejaculating. Just on this model, let's say that each ejaculation is releasing 5 drops of Jing. And you got a full bucket. That's not a lot. But guess what? If you have a leak in your bucket, and you're losing 5 drops a day, if you ejaculate 3 times, that's 15 drops a day. Plus, maybe you have a terrible diet, you're stressing about things, all these other ways that you can spend your Jing, that becomes a pretty big leak. Before you know it, this vitality is just pouring out of your bucket, just out of control. When most men get to even their 20s now, their bucket is like a quarter full, a third full, a quarter full. There's not a whole lot left. And they continue to spend it, it's gone, essentially, right? Your aging is accelerated, hormones are gone. Jing is very much related to your hormone levels. So that's a problem. That's a real problem. And this is where semen retention comes in. It's sealing one of these leaks, okay? It's like, okay, let's seal this leak. Great, we're no longer leaking that way. Of course, there's other leaks we can seal. Your stress, poor diet, lack of exercise, etc. But this is the big one. Let's say that each day you go without ejaculating is putting 3 drops back in your bucket. 3 drops back in. But then the next I ejaculate, 5 out. Still a net loss. But if I go 2 days without ejaculating and then I ejaculate, I lose 5 drops, but I'm a net gain of 1 drop, okay? Well, if I go a week without ejaculating, 5 times 7, that's 35. That's 35 drops in. And then I ejaculate at the end of that week, that's a net gain of 30 drops. If I go a month, you put in 150 drops, we'll just say that's 150 drops, and then we lose 5 drops. It's like, yeah, I've lost something, but I've gained even more. And here's the other thing. Because in the beginning, you're often starting from a place of extreme depletion. Let's say you barely have a little puddle at the bottom of your bucket. That's how much Jing you have left. 5 drops from that puddle, it feels like a big loss. It's like, shit, that's why the ejaculation hits you so hard. For me, it was a period of about 4 years until I felt like I really filled my Jing bucket back up to a reasonable level, okay? Let's say you're 3 years in. You've managed your diet, you're managing your thoughts better, you're meditating, you're not allowing your monkey mind just to run all over the place, running in anxiety and overthinking and spending up your Jing, which is another way you lose your Jing. You've managed to rebuild. Let's say it was like a puddle. It's like there's barely anything. Now you get up to a quarter. You're 3 years into practicing semen retention. That doesn't mean you've not ejaculated for 3 years. It means that you've put more drops in your bucket than you've emptied. And yes, this is a slow process. You're filling it back up drop by drop. So it's a time game. 5 drops out of here, that's no longer such a big loss. It's not a big deal. You don't feel so depleted. You're like, oh, I barely noticed it, whatever. Of course, if the next day you lose another 5 drops and another 5 drops, you get back in the habit of emptying your bucket, you're back to square one. Over time, as long as you're putting more drops in that bucket than you are spending, you're gonna refill that bucket, okay? This is investment. I call it the investment model because it's like a bank account. You're born with a certain amount, and if you spend it all, it's gone. That's what men do. They overspend their energy because it seems like it's infinite. They got nothing left. So, you know, you're living your life. Yeah, there's expenses, you gotta pay bills, etc. But you're investing in your savings, and as long as you're putting more in there than you're taking out, it's gonna grow over time. And this is kind of the trouble with the modern world, is that most people can't think like this. They don't understand that it's this everything or nothing game. And it also kind of shows you how people tend to manage their money as well. It's like, when I have money, oh, look how much money I have. All right, now I spend it all, now it's gone. Oh, I'm starting back over. So that mindset creeps over into semen retention, this kind of lack mindset. And when you understand and start to work with this model of your vitality, of your energy, it starts to carry over into other areas of your life as well. It all is this sort of currency of vitality, of life force. How long this is going to take is unique to you. It really depends. That's why some men, 5 days in semen retention, they say, wow, I feel better than I ever had. That was me, because I was so depleted. Some men are starting from, you know, maybe their bucket's half full. And they're like, oh, I heard the semen retention thing's gonna like make all these ladies flood to me, and I'm gonna have like laser beams coming on my eyes and shit. There's so much bullshit around semen retention. They're starting from this point, and so for them, they don't really notice much of a difference from practicing semen retention because they're not that depleted. Or for some men, it literally is like there's nothing left in the bucket. They're so depleted that it's gonna take a while for those drops to build up to be anything substantial. So it depends how depleted you are, depends on your lifestyle, your habits, etc. The question here is like, well, should I never ever ejaculate? Again, on a technical level, it's going to help you put more drops in the bucket the less you ejaculate. So if you want to go 3 months, a year without ejaculating, that's great. But the whole thing is here, you have to understand there's a balance within this as well. You can check out my recent video on the semen retention cycle. For me, I think the most ideal for men is about once a month, to ejaculate about once a month. It may be a little bit more or less than that based on your age, the time of year, etc. But the thing is that I personally don't feel that it's healthy to go forever without ejaculating. I mean, most men, they simply can't. It's impossible because their body has a nocturnal emission at some point, and a lot of men are egotistical about it and pretend it didn't happen. Oh, yeah, no, it never, I'm on day 1,000, I swear. And it's just this ego game of like counting numbers. It's stupid, it's pointless, it's not gonna do you any good. It's about a path of balance. And when you understand this, even if you ejaculate once a week, depending on your age, your health, etc., you may still be in a net gain in this model, okay? And this is what it's really about. Like, yeah, this model works for like short term of like, okay, well, just go 100 days and that's it. But the problem with this mindset is that if you do ejaculate, you feel like a failure, and this is where men get stuck in these patterns of, okay, I'm gonna go 3 months without ejaculating, then, oh, I jerked off to porn. Well, I might as well jerk off to porn another 7 times. Empty your fucking bucket. Yeah, then you really are on square one. Then try the whole thing over again. It's a stupid model. It's not very effective. Whereas like the more days you've gone on your current streak, that's what's indicating your success. But that's not it. This is it. It's how much you're filling your bucket. And maybe there's one man who's gone a year without ejaculating, and you ejaculate once a month. But guess what? 5 years of doing that, you've accumulated more Jing, more energy. Your hormones are more regulated, testosterone's improved, etc. And yes, there is a temporary kind of reset to the system after an ejaculation. You may feel a bit wiped out for a day. And in my opinion, like, it's not really a big deal when that happens, because personally, like for me, I have so much energy. Every now and then it is nice to have a day where I'm not just like super horny and super just like overstimulated, essentially. There's all these myths, there's all these things about semen retention. Like you hear one like, oh, well, you have to go at least 90 days without ejaculating because that's how long it takes for the sperm to mature. And like technically, yeah, well actually statistically it takes about 46 to 76 days. The average is about 72 days for the sperm to mature, if we want to get technical. But another truth is that when you ejaculate once, you're not dumping out everything you have. you only release a portion of the sperm that you have. You know what I mean? And so again, when you understand this model, it's about compounding interest over time, putting way more drops in the bucket, losing a few here and there. It doesn't matter. So you don't need to get all neurotic and obsessive about it. You can enjoy your life. You can have sex. And of course, the sexual kung fu practice is you're drawing out the essence of the hormones, the energy of the sperm before you ejaculate them. That's what the practice allows you to do. So instead of losing 5 drops, you may only lose 2. It's bad sexual kung fu, my friends. And like I said before, your ejaculation is not the only way that you're losing Jing. There's a lot of other aspects to that. And your next best step right now will be to watch my video on how to regain your sexual vitality, how to rebuild your Jing. So I'm gonna put a link to that in the description of this video. As always, let me know if you have any questions or, I'm curious what your perspective is on the semen retention timeline. Make sure you give this video a like, hit subscribe. Take care, boys.